Hello and welcome to iBuzz. I'm your host Nosheen Bukhari, bringing you the most exciting and latest entertainment news from showbiz world. In today's episode, we will discuss the impact of music festivals, followed by a movie review on Scarface. First things first, let me quickly take you to the top stories of the day. Matt Doyle announced as UB40's new lead singer. Richard Ashcroft refuses to play festival that is government test event. Vanessa Williams and PBS slammed for Black national anthem performance. Robert Downey Jr. sparks outrage after unfollowing Marvel stars on Instagram. And Elon Musk supports hashtag Free Britney movement on Twitter. And now moving to the top story of the day. Singer Richard Ashcroft has pulled out of the headline slot at a music festival after it became part of the government's pilot event program. Sheffield's Tramlines Festival will take place from 23rd to 25th July in front of a full capacity 40,000 audience and is part of the event's research. To discuss this further, we are joined by entertainment journalist Liz Dunphy. Liz, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So Liz, the former Verve frontman told fans on Instagram he would have no part in any such events. Do you think this indicates the impracticality of such pilot music festivals?
I don't think personally, I don't think it indicates the impracticality of such music festivals. Richard Ashcroft decided to pull out because he heard that the festival, the Tramlines Festival in Sheffield, was going to be part of the government's events, kind of pilot events program, where basically they can monitor the transmissibility of COVID-19 and therefore try to figure out how to better protect people attending these mass events. Obviously, we've all been living through a global pandemic, and it's been a learning curve really for everybody to figure out how best we can protect public health while also living in this new reality that we've all been suddenly cast into. So Richard Ashcroft he said that he had told his agents months ago that if there were going to be any restrictions on the festival, then he would not play in it. And this festival now requires people, attendees, basically to have either a negative COVID test, which has been taken within the last 48 hours, or else to have proof of being fully vaccinated. So from July 19th in the UK, basically, at the moment, the plan is that all public health restrictions will be lifted around COVID-19. That includes mask wearing, so it will no longer be free to wear masks, and also social distancing, so people will be able to file into venues again, drink at bars, all that kind of thing, which has not been allowed under current COVID-19 regulations.
Right. Liz, Ashcroft gave a statement that he had informed his agent months ago that he wouldn't be playing concerts with restriction. And now he says the status of the festival was one thing when he signed up for it, but sadly was forced to become something else. So do you think that he's trying to accuse the organizers for misleading the artists in order to perform forcefully?
I mean, that's a reasonable interpretation, I suppose, of his statement. Absolutely. A number of artists have used their platforms for, I suppose, to express their political opinions on the whole COVID-19 situation. But at the end of the day, the government has a responsibility to keep its citizens safe and to reduce fatalities at the end of the day, to stop people from dying from this virus. So I mean, we all have to be reasonable in our actions and in our interpretations of things. But he obviously feels very passionately about this, so it's his right to pull out, of course. But I think most acts will be more measured in their response to this, and we'll see that the point of these public health measures is ultimately to try to protect human life. That's it. It's not like the government is, really happy to be putting these measures in place. They're not. It's actually the opposite. But we're trying to save lives and to save people from dying from these viruses. Luckily, interestingly, there's been a huge spike in cases in the UK and internationally again. So I think yesterday there were more than 27,000 new cases, which is very similar to the wave of cases that they had in January as well. There was another huge spike in January, but there's a big difference in the amount of deaths now. So unfortunately, 9 people did die of COVID, die with COVID in relation to COVID-19. Yesterday, 9 new deaths were announced, but back in January, there were, 1,600 deaths some days, huge amounts of deaths. So I think the UK government's position now is that, yes, we do have a spike in cases, but the deaths are not the same as what they used to be. Hospitalizations are much lower. So that means the vaccinations must be working to help keep those outcomes lower than what they were. So I think that is their thinking with continuing with the planned on July 19th.
Right, but concerts with restrictions, we're exclusively talking about the restrictions like vaccine passport. They have been a sign of hope for the revival of music industry, but mainstream artists refusing to play out of the pandemic fear, which of course makes sense, but can this cause major problems in the process of reviving music festivals back? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, this whole thing has been such a problem obviously for music venues. It's been a disaster for artists, particularly for, more mid-level and emerging artists who do not have the following that artists like Richard Ashcroft already has. Like he has a huge chunk of career behind him already, but a lot of emerging artists don't have that yet, and it's been an incredibly difficult time for live music, for venues. And if this if COVID testing, if vaccine passports allow these venues to open safely more quickly, then I think we have to try that. And I think it's reasonable that we do have things like like pilot programs that are kind of monitoring the transmissibility at these events, so that we understand how we can open them safely for the majority of people and get these people back to work again while keeping people safe.
Apparently, it's about one's personal choice whether to attend these events or not. What is your take on that?
Yes, I mean, of course, it's one's personal choice whether you attend these events or not. I suppose, people who are very concerned about COVID might say that it's not one's personal choice if a lot of people go to a venue, which is a huge COVID super spreader event, and then they come back into the community around vulnerable people who would not have chosen to go to an event. I think that probably is something that we have to all think about and, weigh up the risks versus the benefits of doing so. But of course it is everybody's, their own prerogative whether they go to these events or not. And these events are really important particularly for young people, but for communities in general. Like festivals bring people together. They give people a sense of, shared interest, of human bond. And it's a huge part of the summer as well for a lot of people. It's a real rite of passage for a lot of people, really attending these festivals and having that experience. So yeah, I suppose the sooner we can all get back to doing that safely, the better.
Right. And Liz, do you see any linkage between these refusals from the artists and the Brexit policy impact on the musicians? I mean, previously we know that Ian Brown stepped down from festival over vaccine. So in your opinion, do you think this can also be one of the reasons that many artists are refusing to accept the idea of vaccine passport?
I don't know if it's linked specifically to Brexit policy, to be honest, but there is definitely a kind of movement which could be described as potentially libertarian within the Brexit movement, which wants to see as a minimal state involvement really in public life as possible. So in that way, I suppose it could be linked to the Brexit movement, but I don't really see that it's linked specifically to any Brexit policies as such. But there is an ideology within that movement which could be linked to the kind of attitudes that people like Ian Brown have definitely been propounding on their Twitter. He's been notoriously anti-COVID vaccine and also anti-mask wearing. Even obviously a lot of science behind the benefits of mask wearing, but he decided to take a contrary kind of view on that. But I think we have to remember as well, these artists like Richard Ashcroft and Ian Brown, who have now, spoken out and pulled back from festivals because of the public health measures. Like, they're the minority. We're talking about these two people at the moment. I know Van Morrison has also spoken out about this kind of thing, but there are two people that we're talking about. The majority of artists are happy to go along with this and try to make this work in a way that's safe for everyone, while also allowing them to work and inspire people with their music. So I think we have to keep it in context that, these are only two people that are pulling out at the moment, not hundreds or thousands of artists.
Absolutely. And Liz, in your personal opinion, how do you see the effectiveness of these vaccine passport festivals? I mean, how do you, understand this idea, and how would you break it down for our viewers?
Well, I think it's also important to note that at the moment it doesn't seem to be just, as far as I'm aware, it does not seem to be just about vaccine passports. So that's one element of it. Either you can show that you're fully vaccinated, and then that entitles you to go to the concert without having to show that you've tested negative for the virus. So the other prong of that is that you can take a test within 48 hours or more recently beforehand, either an antigen test or a PCR test. There are two types of tests. And if that shows that you've tested negative for the virus, then I think that you often do have access to these events as well. So I think it's not just that you have to be vaccinated, it's also that you either have to be vaccinated or you have to test negative for the virus. So I mean, I really don't see how it's going to play out in the future. Obviously, there have been a lot of arguments saying that it's discriminatory to insist that people have a vaccine. But I think if you can either show that you have been fully vaccinated or you have tested negative for the virus, I think that's a way of balancing that, while also trying to limit the spread of the virus in these events.
True, absolutely. Thank you very much, Liz. Great discussion.
Thank you for having me.
That was Liz Dunphy with her thoughts on Ashcroft refusing to play in music festivals. And now moving to other story details of the day. UB40 has announced Kyoko musician Matt Doyle will replace Duncan Campbell as their new lead singer. The band said it searched for a singer after Campbell announced he was retiring from music after having a seizure at his home last month. Kyoko has previously supported its fellow Birmingham reggae band on tour. Doyle said that he doesn't quite know how to put into words just how incredibly honored and grateful he feels to be given this opportunity. Campbell, who replaced his brother Ali on singing duties in 2008, suffered a stroke in August last year. He had been preparing for the band's UK tour, but said he was reluctantly retiring due to continued ill health. There was a backlash over Vanessa Williams performing for Independence Day before it even happened. Williams hosted PBS Capitol 4th on Sunday, and it had been announced that she would sing Lift Every Voice and Sing, which has become known as the Black National Anthem. Conservative Twitter jumped on the national anthem part and declared it divisive, segregation, and racist to have any anthem other than the Star-Spangled Banner, which was scheduled to be performed by Grammy Award winner Renee Fleming. American actor Robert Downey Jr. has left alarm bells blaring amongst Marvel buffs after he unfollowed his fellow Avengers. Social media users were sent in a tizzy after the 56-year-old unfollowed all of his fellow Marvel co-stars from the Instagram, including Tom Holland and close pal Chris Evans. Downey Jr. still follows his castmates on Twitter amidst the public meltdown over his Instagram snub. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk joined the calls to free Britney on Twitter as outcry over Britney Spears' conservatorship continues. In his tweet on Monday, the Tesla and SpaceX CEO wrote, #FreeBritney, urging millions of followers to voice support for the singer. Musk's message attracted more than 291,000 likes and 36,000 retweets within hours. And that is it from our newsroom. We will be right back after a quick short break. Stay tuned to find out more. Welcome back. In this segment, we will be reviewing the movie Scarface. Scarface is a 1983 American crime drama film directed by Brian De Palma and written by Oliver Stone. A remake of the 1932 film of the same name, it tells the story of Cuban refugee Tony Montana, acted by Al Pacino, who arrives penniless in 1980s Miami and goes on to become a powerful drug lord. To review the movie, we have film critic Anthony Abraham with us. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me here this morning.
So, Anthony, let us talk about the fascinating character of Tony Montana. I mean, how would you define his character in Scarface?
Well, sometimes I ask myself, is it the movie itself or the character we like? It's very hard to answer that question because sometimes it feels like it's the character itself where it's so emotionally attached to, and we forget about the entire film because, you know, it's for me, it's one of the touching areas is the fact that he's a gangster, he's ruthless, and, you know, he can't trust himself because he doesn't stay true to anybody's rules. But at the same time, he has feelings for his sister. You understand? So that emotional side, you know, gave it a very, you know, sentimental connection to the character, Tony Montana, because we know him, he's wild, he's always cursing, he doesn't listen to anybody, he's cocky, he's just discombobulated, that's the word. But he has this emotional attachment to his sister, you know, from the scene where he goes to visit her with her mom, and, you know, where he was very protective of her dating his friend. And, you know, when he had to kill his friend, so that aspect of him, Tony Montana itself, is very difficult to be able to define or explain or understand. And so for me, sometimes it looks like the character is bigger than the film itself.
So, Anthony, can we talk about the amount of violence in this crime drama, which seemed very realistic, as if you're actually experiencing a gangster life yourself?
Okay, I'm not surprised because I mean, you're talking Cubans, you're talking the drug world, you're talking gangsters. So there was no way, you know, we wouldn't see the violence. If you remember all the way from the beginning, there was a chainsaw scene and that was, you know, really violent. And, you know, there was a lot of F words. Even the producer had challenges getting a censor board to approve his film. The first time he submitted was a challenge. The second time was a challenge. Even the third time, you know, and they kept saying, no, there's too much violence here. There was too much F words. They had a problem with the clown being shot. You know, one of the scenes, the club scene where there was a major shootout. So it was just too much. And these guys had to, you know, crank it all up. And, you know, Brian De Palma said, look, this is the third time. What I'm going to do now after the second and third editing, I'm going to take it back to the first original picture and I'm going to war with the censor committee. And he won. And the movie got a screening, and you know it was a bit difficult in the beginning, but later, I mean, it grossed over $60 million. So for me, it was needed to tell the story because you know when you're telling the story, you have to be authentic with the story, and there's no way you're talking about crime, you're talking about a drug world, and there's no violence. So it's nearly impossible to separate that without, you know, dousing the authenticity of this script. And in this character, we had to see how he grew fast because it's a feature film and we had to be able to understand all the elements to build this character up. And we had to know why he's the way he is. He came from a violent background. So he had to have all that. And to get to the top so fast, there was no way he'll do it without the guns.
Right. And Anthony, the wit that Michelle Pfeiffer's character adds to this movie is remarkable. What are your thoughts on her character?
Of course. Well, in her case, she was in her 20s then. In fact, she wasn't the one who was originally, you know, planned for that role. I mean, they had a lot of other people from Gina Davis to Sigourney Weaver. But I think she did a great job. Elvira was just amazing. And, you know, she was the woman he was crazy about that turned him into a clown. She was the woman that brought out his humor. You know, he became funny when he was chasing her. And for me, she could talk to him. You understand? She could talk to him and face him and not be afraid of Tony Montana, the drug lord. So I think for me, her character played, you know, a really symbolic role. I remember how skinny and frail she was in that movie. I remember the dancing scene in the club. And you remember we can't say that now, but remember the lines, what she said about if you were the last man on earth. So for me, Pfeiffer was, and after that, Pfeiffer, you know, she took off. So it was a good movie for everybody. You know, it was a movie, even Al knew it, that if I don't take this character it probably, I'll never forgive myself. I heard even Pacino was probably, tipped on playing that role. So for Pfeiffer, I'm happy she did it, and she did a good job. And, I knew Pfeiffer from Scarface, you understand, and I began to look out for her more. So it's a film that you can't go wrong in. Anybody who's in that movie, you're lucky. You're a lucky person, no doubt.
Right. So we know that the story was remarkable, the casting was remarkable, the directions and everything. But in your opinion, what specifically makes Scarface such an iconic movie?
Well, I think it's cliche when we say Pacino, right? Because his character as Tony Montana, did a lot. He's Spanish accent. He's his character. That's why, if you remember during this conversation earlier, I said it's very difficult to say, is it the movie or is it the Scarface character himself as Al Pacino? You understand? So it's very difficult to say. For me, I'll say it's him. I'll say it's him because he brought a guy I can't even define into Tony Montana. Tony Montana became a pop culture, with his last line with the M16, say hello to my little friend. So there's just so much about him. I mean, it's say goodnight to a bad guy. These things would make you remember him and sometimes forget the film. So I feel he's just the character that brought that film out. And maybe if somebody else had done it, I don't know. It's possible they would have been able to do a great job. I feel DiCaprio will do a great job. I think he's a great guy. I'm not supposed to be dropping names right now, but I want to strongly believe that. It's a great script, a fantastic team, fantastic production, good budget, but Pacino brought a lot to the table in getting into that character, Tony Montana. So it did so much for the movie itself that you remember Pacino and you could easily forget Scarface. So whenever you hear Scarface, what comes to your mind is Pacino. You understand? So I feel he's done so much in bringing so much life. I'm happy he stuck to his guns and said, look, I'm not going to allow somebody else take this character. I'm going to play Tony Montana, even with all the challenges we had. I'm sure you heard about the time he grabbed the muzzle of one of the machine guns and got burned in his hand. And, they had to have the 2 weeks break. But I feel it's him. It's difficult to separate him from the film. Whenever you say Scarface, you remember Tony Montana and you remember Al Pacino. So strongly, I would say, yes, the characters were all amazing. It was a collective effort, but he did a great job. Right.
So talking about the comparison and talking about, Al Pacino bringing a lot to the table in this movie, which one of these movies would you, recommend the most? Goodfellas, Godfather, or Scarface? Of course, no comparison, but out of these three, which one of you think that stand out?
But already, right? It's The Godfather.
Okay.
I would say Scarface is an incredible movie. The Godfather is a classic.
No comparison to Godfather.
It's an undisputed, it's a undisputed champion. It's on its lead, it just stays there. So it's a very, I feel for me, it's not tricky. I can go straight and just tell you Scarface is an incredible movie, but Godfather is a classic. You can't, it's very difficult. Maybe because Godfather is more of like a collection. It's you're watching a dynasty. You understand? You're watching so much, and maybe because maybe it's just Scarface is just one movie, and because it's a movie that's so pacey, so it seems very short. You understand? So maybe that's why it's difficult for me. Goodfellas is a great movie. You understand? But Scarface, Godfather, it's. I feel it's not fair comparison. It's not fair at all. It's not fair. Trust me, it's not fair. Yeah.
Okay, Anthony, it was great discussing this movie with you. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much.
That was Anthony Abraham reviewing Scarface. And that is it from today's episode. We hope you liked it. Don't forget to share your feedback on the social media links mentioned down below. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care and goodbye.